I was thinking like the fact that everyone in America has suddenly admitted that Joe Biden was mentally deficient and not actually president of the United States for the last couple of years. You think that's worth talking about at all?
Feels like a pretty big deal to me. It feels like kind of the scandal of a century.
Yeah.
And we're supposed to just brush it under the rug.
Yeah, that's really like what we were supposed to do. I mean, I'm happy this stuff is happening. At least we're having these conversations. There's so much more to this. But like you say a scandal of a century, it's a really interesting way to phrase it because we had a similar scandal with Woodrow Wilson. And like, you know, of course I work here. So unfortunately I've had to talk about Woodrow Wilson more than any other person in the entire world probably. But like I remember when Glenn first told me the story about how Woodrow Wilson, you know, had a stroke and his wife was basically running the country for a while. I remember thinking how impossible that would be to happen today. And little did I know, we were only a few years away from it really going on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it really is. To your point, you would think with the access that we have now, with the video that we have now, with all of the capabilities and technology that we have now, that wouldn't happen. But then again, you underestimate or maybe overestimate the Democrat Party and their willingness to just go by the ends justifies the means, right? And so it really didn't matter. Don't believe your lion eyes. Don't believe your lion ears. We're here to tell you, despite the fact that Joe Biden can't walk upstairs, despite the fact that Joe Biden can't walk downstairs, despite the fact that Joe Biden is tripping over sandbags, can't coherently, complete a sentence, basically looks dead at all times. We're here to tell you he is full of vigor. Remember, that's what his doctor said in the doctor report. He literally used the term vigor. He's very vigorous.
Yeah.
And he's not to be confused with rigor.
Right.
Rigor mortis, right?
No.
Because you would be confusing when you're looking at Joe Biden.
That does seem to be setting in, yes.
he said vigor.
Fascinating because and that was actually their excuse for some of the problems. One of the problems that we talked about this last week, that when he was, having this difficulty walking, their excuse was, well, he broke his ankle a while ago. And he has so much vigor that he didn't want to wear his boot for long enough, so it never really healed properly, and that's why he can't walk. It was too much vigor, Sarah. That's really what they wanted us to believe. And then we were seen as these weird conspiracy theorists and these psychopaths for criticizing this poor guy for a problem that wasn't real. Remember, if you saw him when he was off camera, he was incredible.
I mean, if you only could have seen it. Very few aides, they were the only ones who saw it. But if you could have just seen it, you too would know that really they couldn't even keep up with Joe Biden. That's literally what they said. Karine Jean-Pierre, at a certain point, said, I can barely keep up with him. I mean, that was what we were supposed to believe. And now you see all of this playing out now that they don't have to pretend anymore. Now that they've already lost what there was to lose, now we're seeing everything come out. And it really is despicable. I hope that they're not allowed to get away with all of this.
I hope so. I want to see every one of Karine Jean-Pierre's texts in this time.
Yes.
I want to see what she messaged a bunch of her other aides. I want to know what they were saying when they were talking to each other. This should all be part of the record.
Yes.
At the very least, maybe we'll find out none of them really knew, and it's a bigger scandal because they hid it even from them. That's
right.
what the book kind of indicates that some of that happened at least. Let me go from inside the White House, because I think there's potential criminal actions to be taken against them. The media, I don't know if it's criminal. It was certainly awful what they did here, and I think it's part of the story, a big part of the story, because they seem to just kind of take the word for the White House that he was running circles around people when in a rare case they would actually ask a question about this. The media culpability. Give me a minute about that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it is really disgusting that the very same people who were covering for Joe Biden during the first campaign, during the presidency, during the second campaign, Jake Tapper, you have Jake Tapper that was profiting off of covering for Joe Biden and lying about it, and now will be profiting off of a book. So the thought of that is pretty disgusting.
It's hard, yeah.
When you really think about it. But I mean, they do have a lot of culpability, and there's blame to be shared. This is what I tell my children. There's always blame to be shared. And in this situation, it's no different. There is blame to be shared by the mainstream media who covered for him, who covered Karine Jean-Pierre telling America these are cheap fakes and deep fakes. There's nothing to see here, and didn't question these things. I mean, the only person in that White House press briefing room who was questioning things was Peter Doocy.
Yeah.
The rest of them were perfectly fine just letting them say what they were going to say, taking what the White House talking point was and running to air with it. And so there is a lot of blame to be shared here, I think, with the mainstream media, but especially with the people who constantly parrot the word democracy, which we are not. But they seem to think that we should be. And yet they were perfectly fine with a vegetable being sat. We had a Weekend at Bernie's president being sat there in the Oval Office while clearly someone else who was completely unelected was making decisions.
Yeah.
So whether that's the mainstream media, whether that's Democrat, the heads of the DNC, whether that's Democrat lawmakers, that is a huge freaking problem, especially for people who claim to care about democracy, that you have. Who was it? We still don't know, but it certainly wasn't someone who was elected, and that's really scary. So yeah, I mean, mainstream media shares blame. Joe Biden shares blame.
Yep.
Every single person who was around this man or who watched this happen and either said nothing or told all of us that we were just lying about it, all of them share blame in this. Now, who is criminally responsible remains to be seen.
Yes.
But
I want to know.
I want to know everything.
Yeah. You correctly point out that, of course, we are a constitutional republic, not a democracy. There are elements of our democracy inside of our constitutional republic. Those are important parts.
Yes.
Democracy can be a little messy at times, but one of the things that is absolutely really, really important for a democracy, the elements of democracy inside our constitutional republic to function, is that the American people can get the information and know things about the candidates.
Yeah.
If we're all just like blindly going into the voting booth and pressing buttons, that's not democracy, at least the way it's supposed to be. The democracy that we do deal with in our country has to be informed, right? And if they're hiding that information from us, that's a massive, massive problem, and it does push back against any of their narratives when it comes to they're the party of democracy. Obviously, they don't care about that at all.
Right.
All the things they did to protect Joe Biden from the things we're talking about now. Eliminating people like RFK off the ballot on the Democratic side, right? Like going and blocking, rearranging the calendar to make South Carolina first so that Joe Biden would win. These are things they did to stop democracy, to try to hide the information we needed to perform our democratic duties inside of the government. The scandal is mind-blowing.
It really is. It really is for anyone who's paying attention. Now, I know there are a lot of people on social media who, you might just say, oh, well, those are just trolls. But I think they're real people who have this opinion that we're just supposed to move on. He's not the president right now. It's like, well, he was just the president for the last 4 years.
We're not relitigating Woodrow Wilson here. This is the last guy.
Right. The very last guy who, by the way, let in I believe the number is closer to 20 million illegal immigrants who destroyed, so many American policies, the fabric of America that we all agreed was why we were all here, completely destroyed so many things, handed President Trump a completely broken country. And I'm supposed to move on. I'm not supposed to care.
Yeah.
If this guy, I don't know, had cancer the whole time, if this guy was mentally incompetent the whole time and I'm just supposed to walk away and move on, that is so absurd. It's incredible.
It is. Let me ask you one more before we go. On the Jake Tapper of it all, because you brought him up. He's one of the authors of this book. There's two authors of the book. The other one's Alex Thompson. Alex did a really good job, even at the time, actually reporting about this stuff and asking questions. We praised him on this show many times on his reporting in 2023 and 2024. Jake Tapper did not hit that standard. And now I don't think Jake was the worst offender of this.
No.
And he was asked about this the other day, and he basically said, look, I should have covered it more. I deserve criticism for not covering it more at the time, but I'm trying to cover it now, was basically his answer. And the eye roll, which was unfortunately off camera, I understand. My one thought about this, though, is that because I don't think he was the worst offender, number one. Number two, he's actually at least doing something about this later, which is not perfect, but better. I feel like because he puts his name on this book, and he's going to get rewarded for it, there's no doubt about it, they're going to sell a lot of copies of this, but people like Joe Scarborough just kind of are just behind the scenes now. They no longer, the people who are the worst offenders and didn't write a book to correct it later are kind of slink in the background, while Jake Tapper kind of takes all the arrows from the right. And while he deserves some of them, I can't take Joe Scarborough on TV acting like he covered this really. In March 2024, Sarah, he's telling us Joe Biden's the best he's ever been. And I just feel like My main point is Joe Scarborough should get blamed more. That's mainly what I'm saying.
I mean, I don't know how you want me to refute that. I agree with you. I agree with you in all circumstances.
Okay, good.
Look, it's disgusting. Like I just said, there's blame to be shared.
Yes.
Right? But I just don't think that Jake Tapper should be absolved because he's like,
I think that's right.
Look, now that there's no stakes at all and my party can't benefit from any of this, I'm here to tell you how bad it really was with my new expose, but I couldn't have possibly known at the time. I just think it's really disingenuous and gross.
Yes.
But again,
I think that's fair.
That's not to say that Joe Scarborough wasn't terrible and doesn't continue to be terrible, and all of the other, Jen Psaki over there on MSNBC and all of these other blowhards who will never actually, take responsibility or accountability for what they did. I mean, of course, I think it's disgusting, but I just don't want to absolve Jake Tapper of any of that.
Yes, I think that's totally fair. Sara Gonzales, Vice President, Texas Family Project. Be sure to catch her right here on BlazeTV as well. Sara Gonzales, Unfiltered. I will actually be on the program tomorrow.
Yes,
right? Is it true? Me, you, and Pat Gray?
Pat Gray.
At the same table?
It's going to be a party.
I'm very excited about this.
Me too.
So make sure to tune into that. That's Tuesday on Sara Gonzales Unleashed. Sara, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you.